to today's live. We have our pets with us. So does my wonderful guest who you're going to meet in a moment. So this is where I go live at least once a day while we're sheltering at home to create a sense of community and provide you with some really interesting topics and people. So today I have a good friend of mine. He is very well known in the plant-based movement as an author, a speaker. He's a motivational speaker, in my opinion, not just a content speaker. He's a bodybuilder, and he's really one of the kindest people I've ever met. Please welcome Robert Cheeke and his dog, Ellie.
Thanks, Chef AJ. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. And
oh
for
my God, I love you so much. I don't know why I don't have you more, but I just mentioned to Robert before that I would really love him to be a speaker on the Truth About Weight Loss Summit this year and talk about bodybuilding and weight loss. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff today, including some of his new books. But one of the things I really want to talk to Robert about, because I get a lot of clients in my work with people that are trying to lose weight and overcome food addictions that have a history of discordant eating. And they also want to be bodybuilders or fitness models and build muscle, but they feel the only way to do it is like with a high protein, low carb, high fat diet and restriction. And I know that that's not true because Robert built all his muscle on plants. It's not like he was this bodybuilder that came to the plant-based diet. He was a scrawny kid that became a hunk. So take it away, Robert and Ellie.
Yeah, thanks, Chef AJ. Ellie, do you want to speak first? Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point. And I try to make that clear in my presentations too, that I was plant-based or vegan long before I started lifting weights. So I became vegan age 15 and weighing 120 pounds. But even before that, at age 14 in 8th grade, I weighed 89.25 pounds. Like I still have that paper, my 8th grade. Of course, it was the beginning of the year. So I put on a little bit of weight after that, but 89 pounds. I was never a big guy. I was a farm kid, raised animals, showed animals 4-H, sold animals at the auction. But at age 15, I decided I didn't want to cause harm to animals anymore. And I went vegan, but you know what? I wanted to get bigger and stronger. Like that was like, I grew up in the era of 80s cartoons of He-Man and Captain Planet. And like, I wanted to be bigger and stronger and be some sort of, I don't know, maybe if I want to be a role model or whatever you want to call it. It's just something that I wanted to do for myself, was to get bigger and stronger. And then when I became vegan, I thought, you know what, this might be a way to communicate this idea that plants have all the protein you need if I success as a vegan bodybuilder. And I struggled at first. I didn't really know what to eat. I was a teenager, didn't have a lot of my own money. I knew what I didn't want to eat anymore, which was animal foods, but I wasn't exactly sure what to eat. And so my diet was kind of like bagels and chips and salsa and even some vegan candy and natural soda and pasta and some soy ice cream. There was like one brand back then. And so like, that's what I knew. And once I figured it out, that there was much more nutrition in whole foods, not processed foods, in plant-based whole foods. And if I could eat those consistently to throughout the day, acquire enough and adequate calories in relation to what my true calorie needs were, combined with resistance weight training, I could get bigger and stronger. So that's what I did. So I went from 120 pounds to, relatively quickly within a few years of really applying myself. I was about 150 pounds by age 20. And then when I really started lifting weights, I shot up to 195 pounds over like the next 2 or 3 years, and then became a bodybuilder, which lasted a full decade of competing as a vegan bodybuilder. And the reason I'm talking to you is because I was one of those people who won competitions, and that gave me some sort of platform. I mean, I was able to win competitions consuming 0 animals, competing against people who literally ate six chickens a day. And so it helped put, I guess it helped in a way put vegan bodybuilding on the map 20 years ago. And I've been doing that ever since, now in my 25th year as a plant-based athlete.
Wow. And you're 40 now, if it's okay to say your age.
I just turned 40. And you just had a birthday too, 50, right?
60, but thank you. Absolutely. You were teaching what the movie Game Changers has been, before the movie came out. That's what you were trying to tell people.
Yeah. Yep. I remember my first speaking gig, or one of the very first ones, was in 2005 at the Taste of Health vegetarian festival in Vancouver, British Columbia. And there was a guy in the audience named Dr. T. Colin Campbell, who was just launching a book called The China Study. And it was really cool because to be there in that same place at the same time when China Study was just coming out and just coming of age. And my speaking career was just getting started. I was a 25-year-old kid. And to see him there, and now, I just saw him, right before his birthday on the vegan cruise. Is it 86 now, I think?
Unbelievable, right?
And just to be able to learn from someone like him over all these years and have him play the role that he did with me, getting me off of sports supplements when I worked with Forks Over Knives in 2011 to where I am now with no supplements aside from vitamin B12 over the last 8 years, while still maintaining, 203 pounds or whatever I am now.
Wow, that's amazing. And that's something I'd love to talk to you about, because when I met you, believe it or not, you were selling supplements. It was in a booth, and you were the nicest person in the booth, and you had such a great sense of humor, and I liked you immediately.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was at the LA World Fest, as a matter of fact, and you're working for Vega. And if somebody insists on taking a protein powder, of course, I'm going to tell them to take one like Vega that's a whole food. But we don't need them, right? I mean, none of us, I'm sure there's some situations, but in general, that's not going to make us bigger, harder, faster, stronger.
Right, absolutely. Well, first of all, we all, without even trying, as long as we consume adequate calories, and that's important. You have to know what your true calorie needs are, and there's ways to figure that out. But as long as we reach our calorie needs and we eat any kind of diversity of food at all, we're going to reach our protein requirements because they're so low, 5 to 10% of our total calorie intake. But as a weightlifter, as a bodybuilder, as a strength athlete, we may need more. But it doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot more protein as a percentage, and maybe more volume of food. And as long as the food is from whole food sources, it's not like we're consuming lots of extra oils and processed sugars and flours and fats and adding all this potential extra body fat. What that extra surplus in calorie intake can do is to go toward building muscle mass, so long as there's some resistance weight training to supplement that, so to speak, to assist with that. But yeah, there's absolutely no fundamental need to do some sort of protein supplementation. If someone feels, often, quite honestly, incorrectly, that they are protein deficient, I mean, there has to be some sort of clinical diagnosis, really, to use that kind of expression. People just often throw it around because they're hungry at the time, or they don't eat enough filling food, or enough volume, or enough starchy carbohydrate, or that's an idea that's been put in their head. But if you really do feel you're on the low end of protein consumption, which again would be hard to do if you're eating your required calories, what you can do is just focus on some more protein-rich foods. I mean, we know those to be nuts and nut butters and legumes of all types, leafy green vegetables, if you can get enough volume, not a lot of calories there. But you can do that kind of thing. Even some sort of grains can be a little bit higher in protein, and even some vegetables as well. So there still doesn't really require this need to take an isolated powder and consume it. Now, I do want to say I work with all kinds of protein powders I have over the years as a way to promote the plant-based lifestyle within an arena that is 99% non-plant-based.
That's a great idea. If somebody's going to take a plant-based one.
Right. So I want to make sure I plant that flag there, where I'm not just saying all protein powders are bad or all companies are bad. There's actually some that are doing some really great work. And even like with my Vegan Strong team, that normally we tour the country. Under these certain circumstances, obviously we're not, but typically we travel to the largest fitness events in America. I'm talking like not a Veg Fest audience, but for example, the last one that we were supposed to be at has an audience of about 300,000 people. It's the Arnold Sports Festival put on by Arnold Schwarzenegger in Columbus, Ohio. The last one that we actually did was in Los Angeles at the LA Fit Expo, which had about 80 or 90,000 people. And what we do there is it's a 99% non-plant-based audience, and here we are with our Vegan Strong booth with all these great vegan bodybuilders, men and women alike, from different backgrounds and different levels of success and achievement and physique and all that. And we promote plant-based products because these are people who are going to be consuming high protein anyway. That's the conversation you're only interacting for a matter of seconds or minutes with each person that comes by the booth, which is in the thousands of people. And so if we can communicate the power of plant-based protein and give them some samples of here's some rice protein, some pea protein, hemp protein, here's some great brands that do a lot of really good work for the community. I don't have a problem with that. But on a personal level, one thing that I'm trying to communicate, like with my book, Shred It, which was all about building your body on a whole food plant-based diet. That was about using real food to build muscle, to get energy for pre-workout, post-workout nutrition, adequate calories, and to be able to have a great, healthy inside and outside body. And so I'm always quick to say that we don't need protein supplementation, but if it's something that just by personal preference, like that's just who you are and what you do, having a plant-based one is not the end of the world. It's just extra protein we don't really need.
Right. And they can be expensive when compared to whole foods, and I've really never found one that tasted good. I'm going to be honest. And you have to usually put them in smoothies, and mostly I work with people that are trying to lose weight. So that's one of the other reasons I don't recommend them, because it's a liquid calorie. But like, you're right. If you're going to use them, use a whole food one, use a vegan one, and that would be the best. Now, Linda Middlesworth says, "Hi, Robert. Thank you for your great influence on bodybuilding." So that's awesome. And
I know, Linda. Good to hear from her.
And I so admire all the vegan athletes. I remember a couple of years ago on the cruise, you guys were all sitting at the table together at the midnight buffet. And, I can only reach who I can reach. And, I'm not going to reach some muscly guy, trying to get them to be vegan. But you guys are reaching the men, the difficult people. I mean, women have sense. They hear this information and they go plant-based. But you're reaching the people that are really difficult to reach. And that is amazing that you can do that, because, the proof of the pudding, your bodies are as good as theirs, and you win the competitions without any animals.
Yeah, and it's fantastic, and we have some great athletes that travel with us, like Ryan Nelson and Vanessa Espinoza, and I know Danny Taylor and Giacomo Marchese, and Natalie Matthews and Lillian Aguilar, and many of these athletes actually focus on a mostly whole food plant-based diet themselves. They use some supplements, sometimes partly because they're sponsored by the companies and it helps spread the word and grow the brands, like Corinne Sutton and Clean Machine, which, by the way, I think that's probably one of the cleanest, best brands around. And Jeff Palmer is an amazing guy and vegan for 35 years and is in better shape than me. And he's 57 now, I believe. But there are some incredible athletes who are world-class and record holders and pro athletes or former pro athletes beyond just me. In fact, I feel like I'm one of the retired managers, for this group of athletes who are really in their prime. I retired from the sport of competitive bodybuilding 10 years ago, but I'm bigger and stronger now than I ever was then. And peaking at almost 215 pounds, starting, which was a goal of mine. I know you talk a lot about weight loss, but for me, that was a goal, being a 120-pound vegan. Now to be able to put on almost 100 pounds and still be able to flex and have muscle and not just, lots of excess fat. I feel good at over 200 pounds as a vegan athlete and be able to have that story.
That's incredible that you're trying to get people bigger, and I'm trying to get them smaller. But yeah, we're both doing good work.
It depends what your personal goal is, and look at the difference that some of those things can make. I mean, obviously, weight loss inspires millions of people, if not more, around the globe, and it's an achievement that deserves all kinds of recognition. But there's also something to be said for building muscle and adding mass on a plant-based diet, because that's the biggest argument that people will give, including the big muscle guys that come by our booth. And then they see that we have some people at our booth that are bigger than them. And they're like, wow, they were able to do that with plants? Like, yeah, because if you have just any small understanding of nutrient density, calorie density, whether it's Joel Furman's Andy Score or Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen, or just or Jeff Novick's calorie density, or Chef AJ's, all of that combined, and understanding how you can have control over weight loss and weight gain, you're in a powerful position to use plants to your advantage. And guess what? They're the things that provide all the vitamins, minerals, amino acids, phytonutrients, antioxidants, fiber, and water as well. Without all that excess saturated fat, cholesterol, lack of antioxidants, lack of fiber that you're going to get with animal protein. So you're better off anyway.
And what's interesting is we basically are on the same diet, whether we're trying to lose or gain. We're both recommending whole plants.
Right, right. We are. I just, and I also fluctuate as well. I mean, I went from 195 pounds winning bodybuilding competitions to when I retired and decided, you know what, I'm done with this. You know, my back's getting a little sore from lifting weights and all that. I started running and I dropped to 165 because I understood how to lose weight if I wanted to. I ate the same foods, but I reduced my total calorie intake and I upped my cardiovascular activity, which created a deficit. That you can you can create a deficit obviously through nutrition or exercise. You do them both, it's faster. And then I was running a half marathon with my wife, Karen, actually, ironically, right here in Colorado, all those years ago, when I met Vanessa Espinoza at the gym. And she recognized me as a vegan bodybuilder, but I was all the way down to 165 pounds. I looked nothing like a bodybuilder. I actually felt a little bit, I don't know, a little bit embarrassed or a little bit uneasy. And I kind of, you know, propped up like this, you know, because she's like, yeah, you look great. I'm like, I knew I wasn't nearly what I was before from a bodybuilding standpoint. And I was ready to start lifting weights again. So Vanessa and I trained together. Again, followed my same approach. In fact, I wrote Shred It during that time. So I was following a supplement-free, you know, semi-limited processed foods, mostly whole foods diet. And I went all the way up to 210 pounds and was bigger and stronger than I'd ever been in my life. And so I've been able to experience that. So yes, we have the same diet. We just consume more or less based on what our goals are. And then our exercise will reflect that as well. So what are you trying to achieve and how consistent are you being? And that will equate the results that you'll end up getting.
Right. And you can do either on plants, the
Absolutely.
healthiest way. I have some really nice comments that I want to read to you from Robert. You and Espinoza are such great, strong vegan role models. And Louise says, it was your book that reached a friend of mine after I sent it to him, who was holding back giving up meat since he felt he needed it to gain muscle mass. He is now 100% vegan. You're such an amazing role model. And I also want to thank you, Louise, for the wonderful travel silverware set you gave me. I use it all the time. Now, I don't want to embarrass you, Robert, like I did in Marshall, Texas. But
That's okay.
Becky says, is he going to remove his shirt and flex his muscles? Maybe we'll say, if you stay with us till the end, that'll give people, and I'll tell you what.
That's why I told Karen before getting on here, I said, that's why I wore the hoodie, because Chef AJ is going to ask me to like undress. So I have layers of vegan strong, like I'm, and you know what, I've been like, it's 100% excuses, which I write about. But I've been writing for like, I mean, yesterday was 12 hours straight. I've been writing a lot lately, and I've been in such a zone that I think you know that as a writer, that I just don't want to stop. Like even bathroom breaks are distracting. Like I just want to keep going. So that I'm full transparency, I actually haven't been training quite as much right now. I just wrote a newsletter about it yesterday because I've been writing so much, 150 pages over the last 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, just high volume. But I did take Ellie out for a little run in the park yesterday, and I've got my dumbbells here that I use, and I know all about that consistency and accountability with fitness, but it also works with writing, and it also works with other areas of life, even being a good listener or being a good partner or whatever. And I've given so much to writing right now that I think I'm writing the best stuff of my entire career. And that I'm actually deliberately putting some exercise off to the side because I know how to do it. I've been doing it my whole life. I can get right back to it anytime. And I even did, like I said, exercise yesterday, the day before, a little bit here and there. So I'm probably not going to do some like, you know, shirtless flexing, but you can use a muscle there under the hoodie.
Well, we're going to show you what he looks like under that. If you stay till the end and share this broadcast, you guys can do it. There is a share button. A couple of people, Anna and Adita, said, what was the brand of the cleanest protein powder you mentioned?
That was a Clean Machine. Clean Machine. I think it probably is. And that's just basically because Jeff Palmer, who I've known for some years now, has been in the industry for decades, and he's also been vegan for decades. And so, you know, he's worked in that protein and supplement industry at really high levels for some major brands and major companies. And he decided, you know what, I'm going to create my own brand and do it my way, totally compassionate, vegan style, and all super high quality plant-based ingredients. And, you know, obviously nothing tested on animals or anything like that. not to take anything away from Vega or Orgain or PB2 or Plant Fusion or Sun Warrior. I mean, there's a lot of them. And at the end of the day, the thing is, they may not say it, but many of them are pretty much the same. It's isolated protein. It's in fact, many of them get their ingredients from the same sources, the same company out of whatever, and the same brown rice protein, whatever, but it's just different packaging and different marketing and all that. But there are some that stand out a little bit, and I think Clean Machine probably is one that does stand a little bit ahead of others.
That's nice. Can anybody build muscle, Robert? Even my husband can, really skin. I mean, well, you were a skinny, scrawny guy, but people do different body types, and can really anybody build that muscle?
Yeah, absolutely. Some people are just going to have an easier time than others. You're not going to see me in the NFL. You're not going to see me looking like an NFL player at 300 pounds with even semi-low body fat, just huge muscle, big shoulders, big chest, big thighs. I'm not built that way. I was built to run, and I was really good when I did run. I mean, I still question, maybe I should have pursued that instead of bodybuilding, because that came naturally to me. But I took that challenge. And I did what I think is important sometimes. Like, you can be naturally good at something and learn to love it, or you can love something and learn to get better at it. And that's what I did. I checked in right here. Like, I was a pretty good runner, on the #2 cross country team in the state of Oregon. And then I ran for 1 year at Oregon State University. And, I was a decent runner. But right here, inside, I just wanted to get bigger and stronger for my own reasons, to do something I hadn't done before, to build up a certain confidence I hadn't had before, to be more physical in the team sports that I played, soccer and basketball or physical sports like wrestling. And so I took that challenge. And of course, the obvious answer is no, you can't do it. And guess what, Chef AJ? That's exactly what happened the first year. I wrote about this in probably all of my books, at least for a little bit, a few paragraphs, because it's fundamentally important that when I went from running, I still have all the things I wrote down, all the body weight and everything. I was 155 pounds. And I was going to turn into this bodybuilder, this muscle guy. I was reading the muscle magazines. I was super excited. I started lifting weights. I was taking some vegan supplements I found at the health food store, and I was ready. And after an entire year, I gained 1 pound. I mean, the easiest thing in the world was to just quit and stick to what I'm good at, running, stick to what my body wants to do. But then I stumbled, just a few weeks later. So my body hadn't changed. I wasn't older. I was like a week older, 2 weeks older. I was the same environment. I just stumbled upon Bill Phillips' Body for Life program. And in that program, very popular in the late 90s, early 2000s, maybe the most popular book, body transformation book of all time. The book was saying, you really should be eating, again, for building muscle, eating 6 times a day. Therefore, you're consistent all throughout the day. You're always nourished, and you're getting adequate calories and from protein, carbohydrates, and fats throughout the day. And also to exercise 6 days a week too. And so what I realized was, so I did that, and it was a 12-week challenge, because, they have to have challenges. That's how you sell books. That's how you give out awards. That's how you, whatever, bring attention to it. There's a deadline. There's before and after photos. There's all those things that we still do today. But it was a 12-week challenge. And remember, I put on 1 pound in a whole year, but I put on 19 pounds in 12 weeks. And I even got sick towards the end, just stress of school and weather. I was living in Salt Lake City and never missing a workout and all that. And then I put on another 10 pounds after that. And then I became a competitive bodybuilder. But what happened was, I wasn't acutely aware of what I was doing before, even though I was really motivated. And I was really excited about lifting weights and building muscle. I was still running. I was still cycling. I was still burning an exceptional amount of calories while not consuming enough, because I wasn't following any kind of nutritional routine. I just ate when I felt like it as a student with a limited budget. So basically what I'm saying is, I never put myself in a position to build muscle. It just wasn't scientifically possible. I didn't have a calorie surplus. I didn't have this consistency of nutrition plus resistance weight training with a reduction of cardiovascular training. So once I fixed that, I could course correct, I could right the ship, and then I was able to build muscle when it was literally not possible before that. And then, like I told you, I've gone up and down. I've had injuries. I got into half marathon running and then came right back to bodybuilding and right back to 205, 210 pounds. So, and I think that that's true really for anybody. You just have to put yourself in a position to make it happen. And then you have to be consistent and allow adaptation to take place over time. You know why January 17th is the most popular day people give up on New Year's resolutions? They didn't give enough time. Their goal was either too big or too small. They didn't put in the work, and they expected a 100% return on a 40% investment and said, hey, I got to wait another 11 and a half months until next year and we'll try it again. And so my advice to people is, I know it can be hard, and I know we all have different body types, and we can be, you know, ectomorphs or hard gainers, as it's often called in bodybuilding, where it's a struggle to put on muscle. But do it for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then tell me that it didn't work, and document it, at least to have some sort of accountability of your effort. Were you really doing it, or were you sitting behind a computer writing books like me, or watching TV or movies and not actually putting in the work? And I think that's going to produce results.
Yeah, that I see that a lot in my workout. I once gave a consult to a young lady. It was at 7 o'clock at night on Wednesday, and she called me Friday morning at 11 saying it didn't work. Like, I guess she lose about 1 to 2 ounces of body fat a day. How do you even measure that? When you are putting on weight, how do you know it's muscle and not fat? With the people I work with, they have such a history of discordant eating. I discourage weighing themselves, but
Right.
muscle weight is good, and they freak out because if you have more muscle, the number is going to be higher. So how do you differentiate where that weight is coming from?
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's ways just to check it. You can get your body fat checked. I've done underwater hydrostatic body weight, body fat tests, which are the most accurate. I did that during bodybuilding, just I think one time. Other times I just used other measures. You know, whether it was little calipers to check body fat, or various scales, or various trainers using their methods or techniques or whatever. But I think the idea is not to get too discouraged, like you said, not to obsess about what numbers on the scale, because you are going to add muscle mass. You could also be retaining water too, which is heavy, especially if you're using, like some people use creatine supplement, which retains water. That's like what it does. You can retain like 5 to 10 pounds of water. It makes your muscles appear bigger and thicker and puffier. And our muscles are mostly water anyway, so it keeps some extra water in there and in your whole body. If your sodium content is high, you're holding extra water, very, very likely. I mean, you know, weigh yourself now, go have a bag of Gardein vegan chicken tenders with some water and weigh yourself 2 hours later. You're holding on to a lot of that water from the sodium content. So I think what you have to do is just, you have to give it time too. That's why a lot of these challenges are 12 weeks or 6 months or whatever, because you need time to allow adaptation to set in. And so you're almost always going to add, when you're bulking up, you're almost always going to add muscle and fat together. They just support overall mass building. I think in the perfect world, you actually can control that. It's very difficult, but and I wrote about this in Shred It. It's very technical, but basically what you would have to do is you would have to meet your calorie requirements to be a slight surplus in order to add mass. Combine that with resistance weight training, so you're building mass or building muscle while eating mostly whole food, so it's not processed, refined ingredients that can more easily be stored as fat. And all the while, you need to do your fat burning exercise, your cardiovascular exercise, typically in a fasted state to expedite the fat loss, whether that's first thing in the morning or following a weight training workout. These are times when glycogen, glucose in our muscles has been used up. Glycogen is not available. Our body's going to pull some fat to burn as energy. And so in that regard, you technically can build some muscle mass while you decrease body fat, but it's very difficult to do, and not a lot of people are capable of doing it. It takes a certain amount of discipline, and it takes an understanding of physiology in order to do it. I was able to do it in my 20s and 30s because I was like obsessed. You know, I really figured it out. It's why I won bodybuilding competitions or was able to have my before and after, photos or experience or whatever it is. But it's hard to do. So you just have to, I think, mostly accept that if you want to build muscle mass, you're going to take some body fat with you. and very common, just to clarify, very common in bodybuilding is to do both. I mean, it's almost like, especially at the highest level of bodybuilding, it gets pretty silly. Bodybuilders will put on all kinds of mass. They might put on 80 pounds in a period of time, 6 months or whatever, 12 months. I mean, they just put on a whole bunch of mass, muscle and fat. And then what they try to do is maintain as much of that muscle as possible and just do extreme fat burning, which again is not super healthy. And a lot of these athletes are not natural either. They're using anabolic steroids and drugs, and their before and after photos can literally look like an obese individual and then an 8-pack ripped abs within 16 weeks or something. But that's using a lot of pharmaceutical and chemical experiences. But even within natural athletes and natural bodybuilding, a number of people will do that. Well, they'll add a lot of fat and muscle and then try to hang on to the muscle and burn the fat.
Nice. Thank you. A couple of questions. One from, I think it's Alexa. I apologize if I don't have your name wrong. Right. Robert, can you share some insights for teen boys and girls who want to build strength and muscle? Teen years can be filled with lots of pressure to have a certain body type.
Yeah. And that's what I lived through, as a teenager and as a 5-sport athlete. And so the main thing I recommend for teenagers is to, as often as possible, use body weight exercises like push-ups and dips and squats and lunges and pull-ups and things like that. And I think getting the development of that muscle strength is important before you start trying to lift weights and start lifting heavy weights for whether it's upper or lower body. And I have some of that firsthand experience as well. I was trying to show off as a teenager, and I was in the weight room in high school for the first time. I had no idea what I was doing, and so I put on a whole bunch of weight for a leg press machine so I could claim that I lifted like 700 pounds, but it was like maybe an inch range of motion, if that, and with the safety things locked on. But then I couldn't walk for like 3 days. The muscle soreness was so intense because of that kind of thing, and that's common for a lot of people, whether it's a bench press and the weight falls on them or whatever. The best thing is to create some sort of foundation of body weight exercise. And you can still build a strong and muscular and fit body through body weight exercises. It's almost like, and I'm thinking of this just on the spot, it's almost like using a whole food diet to reach a certain result, where you could also use processed foods and supplements to get there too, in a more concentrated way. That's how I would view body weight exercises compared to free weight or machine or cable exercises. You can certainly build up a very fit, strong, flexible, anaerobic body with body weight exercises and still maintain strength and all of that you would with weights as well. What you just have to do is figure out a rep range, supersets, drop sets, those types of things that can make a given exercise like push-ups a little bit more strenuous than they normally would.
Nice. There's a hello from Roger and Mary Patterson, the crazy couple who met at the airport that travel with their cooler to maintain their whole food plant-based diet. I don't think that's crazy at all, Mary. I've always traveled with a cooler.
Yeah. The cooler you are, right?
I love it. I love it. There's a question from Tracy from Columbus, Ohio. Is there anything you recommend for restless legs at night after you work out?
Ooh, I don't have a lot of experience with that, but I am I was a massage therapist. That's what I went to school for in Salt Lake City. I haven't practiced in like 15 years, which annoys my wife. She feels like she should get way more massages than on her birthday and anniversary and things. And I totally agree. So I've been slacking there. But because I did work as a massage therapist and professionally as a sports massage therapist in various venues, gyms and cruise ships and resorts and stuff, I do know that there's some sort of power in whether it's massage therapy or just even meditation or even just like winding down from exercise, even just mentally, and allowing physically your body to wind down a little bit as well, might be able to help with that. Also avoiding caffeine or high sugar foods late at night. Many people, even those of us who work out at night, and I actually have most of my life for those wondering, I mostly work out in the evenings, and during some periods of my life, it was like at 10 o'clock at night, and I would still do a caffeine pre-workout energy drink way back then. But that's gonna be problematic when you're trying to wind down and go to sleep as well. And so whatever methods help relax and de-stress, I use music a lot. Like when I write my book, it's just no lyrics, just I don't know what they call it, meditative music of instruments and nature and that kind of stuff. Sometimes that can help fall asleep easier, and mainly just trying to find some method of winding down or sitting still or clearing thoughts or closing eyes and kind of going through, your body head to toe or whatever, and just being aware of your body and allowing it to just relax. And then of course, avoiding sugar and caffeine is always helpful.
Nice. Well, speaking of your wife, she's as nice as you are and adorable. I love the story of where you met her.
Yeah. So I was first invited to go on this vegan cruise many years ago, probably 2008. But I couldn't afford to go. They wanted me to come on as a potential speaker somewhere down the road, but I had to pay my own way. And quite frankly, I just couldn't do it. I was in my 20s. It was a tough time. I was growing my vegan bodybuilding business. I was a competitive vegan bodybuilder. I couldn't do it. So they reached out to me a couple years later and said, "Hey, Robert, we'd still love to have you come on the vegan cruise as a presenter." I'm like, okay. And I struggled. I still struggled. I mean, I took a job on board to get a discount, got myself on the cruise, and basically didn't have any money. And so I took a red-eye flight from LA. I was living in LA at the time when I could afford to, renting a room from a friend, and took a red-eye flight. So I was on 1 hour of sleep. And so I wasn't even going to go to the welcome party on the cruise. I was just too tired, and I had to do jobs on board, like sponsor photography and stuff. But I ended up going anyway. And once the music hits, you may have seen me on the dance floor. It's hard for me to resist, especially certain hip hop songs and all that. I have to, as I say, drop it like it's lukewarm, or as a friend recently said, drop it like it's room temp. And so I started dancing, and that's where I met Karen on the dance floor on the opening night in the cruise ship. And we were in the same, around the same age group and stuff, and had some, her friend recognized my friend, and we all started talking and dancing. And then the next day, because I didn't have any money, I got off the ship to look around Key West, but I came back on the ship for the free food, the free buffet. And I happened to see Karen and her best friend Tracy walking by. I'm like, "Hey, you want to go out and explore the island together?" And then while we were walking around, flirting a little bit and all that. And then there's cars obviously driving around, but there were all these chickens just running wild. And there was this baby chick that just was super stressed out, weaving in throughout cars and going into the bar. And so I was chasing around and stopping traffic and all this stuff. And I'd like to think maybe that won her over right there. But it was a sincere concern for this baby chick and the other chickens who were just panicking with cars driving all around them. So we stopped traffic and we tried to make sure all the chickens were fine, and got back on the ship. And then we just, hung out the rest of the week. And as it would happen, my job at the time with Vega took me to Seattle, where she was living, literally 3 weeks later. And so I extended my trip out there, and there we have it. But actually, I forgot a special part of the story. Well, two parts of the story. One, it was my birthday on the cruise, and so we got to hang out on my birthday. And so that was special, and that was nice. And it was like the second to last night or something. And then, as I mentioned, and I'm not embarrassed to say it, I really just, I was having a tough time. I didn't have any money back then. In fact, I spent my last cash dollars and even availability on credit or debit card on one of the islands on a little souvenir that I got kind of tricked into buying. And so I couldn't get back to the airport. So Karen paid my $11 shuttle to get me there, and then gave me a little bit of money so I could get a place to stay, because my cheaper flight wasn't until the next day, and I was just going to sleep at the airport. And I forgot, but she said I paid her back when I got to Seattle, so I was good for that. and then we've been hanging out ever since. She was unhappy with her job in Seattle, and so I do what I often do and try to encourage people to be happier. And so she ended up leaving that job and touring around with me. And it was one of the best things that ever happened for me, because I was having a hard time, even though I had a book out, I was having a hard time making it all work because I was giving too many things away for free. And I told people, I literally told people, you don't need to pay me. I'll just sleep on the floor somewhere. I'll sleep in my car. And then Karen told me these wise words that stuck with me ever since. She said, you teach people how to treat you. And all this time, I didn't want to take money away from animal rights organizations or groups that were inviting me to speak. And so I just slept in my car, and I said, I don't need anything. I don't need any money. But it wasn't working. So she came in and played a big role. And guess what? Within a short amount of time, I had an all expenses paid trip to speak in Australia, and she came with me. We did so well. I mean, like $10,000 in books and clothing sales, that we went back to Australia the next year on our own and for another 3-week tour. And then I had the opportunity to speak all over the world, from Asia to Australia, Europe, and all throughout Canada and United States. And that started with getting that support from her, believing in me that I had a powerful message. I just didn't know how to best communicate it. So that's how we started. And here we are. We almost 10 years now been together, because we met in that 2011 cruise. And so just had the vegan cruise, our kind of our little anniversary. We got married almost 2 years ago, and we just left our home in Arizona, and we're here. We've literally been here in Colorado for 3 weeks. So figuring it all out.
Well, that's a beautiful story, Robert. So for you, the vegan cruise was really the love boat. And now when people ask the question, why did the chicken cross the road? We can say, to get Robert and Karen together.
That sounds about accurate.
Neat. Claire would like to know, do you think yoga is a good way to build strength? And if so, how often?
Yeah, I think yoga is a great way to build strength. And I don't know if I'm a hypocrite, but I'm certainly not a practicer of that idea in my own life, to my own detriment. And I say that because I've done some yoga before, and it's been beneficial. And I have some lower back injuries. I have some herniated discs that have bothered me throughout my entire adult athletic career, even through winning competitions and all of that. But I'm also, as you can probably tell, or you know this about me, I have a hard time sitting still. I'm like you. I spent some time in stand-up comedy and performance arts, and doing 5 sports at once, and writing 20 pages a day. I'm a little bit all over the place, and yoga was too slow for me personally. But now, as I can say now that I'm getting older, I am over 40 now, that's actually something that I'm writing more about and looking to explore more, because I've heard some wonderful things about not only building strength and flexibility, which, by the way, I mean, the more flexible you are, the least likely you are to have an injury. I mean, all these kind of things. It can also just, balance you a little bit more, and you can slow down a little bit, and you can prevent injuries better, and you can recover from injuries better. And I think it's something that I actually will be incorporating a lot more. And just as an example, I mean, just for the fun of it, I was, at age 40, I'm as strong as I've ever been. I had a decline bench press, which is a free weight exercise, no machines or anything. It's like a bench press, but at an angle. And I was pressing 325 pounds, which is pretty good for my body weight. It's actually good for any body weight. So I was really proud of it. And I was pressing 300 pounds for like 3 weeks in a row. But my right pec, my chest, and my shoulder was just really, really sore. And a lot of that was, so I actually couldn't do the exercise for over a month. And the reason was because I lacked flexibility. And that's where, had I been practicing some form of yoga, not only would it help with strength, which was the original question, it can help prevent those little things that when you're on a leg press machine and there's hundreds of pounds, or when you're using heavy dumbbells or heavy free weights, or even a heavy machine, and you're rowing, or you're pressing, or you're pressing overhead, you're susceptible to more injuries if you have tighter muscles rather than looser, supple muscles. So I think I absolutely would recommend it. And it's something that I appreciate being brought up, because it's something I know, especially sitting in this chair in this rental house for 12 hours a day, I know my back would thank me for as well.
And that's one thing I actually do love. I wish I could get excited about the lifting like you did. Anna has a question. Why, when we are bulking and training, do we gain around the stomach, and is it fat?
Good question. And I don't know that I have a perfect answer. And everybody's different. We bulk in a lot of different ways. So when we're lifting weights and bulking up and eating more calorie surplus in order to put on extra mass, we add weight differently. Actually, it's men that mostly will get belly fat. They'll get more belly fat than women. Women will tend to get it in their legs, back of arms, and just, you know, thighs in general. Of course, we're going to add mass or body fat pretty much everywhere. There's just some places it goes to more prominently. And for men, it happens to be the belly midsection. I mean, myself included, you know, if I don't train for a long time, if I eat too much fried rice, then I experience that for myself. And so I think the best way to combat that, and I work at this, and I kind of measure the results as well. The best way to combat that is to really, really focus on training specific muscle groups and hard, and seeing a result in that area. For example, if I haven't trained my legs in a long time, they're going to have a certain circumference, you know, based on just my everyday living, walking around. But if I have consistent training with legs, whether that's squats or deadlifts or lunges and leg press, leg extensions and curls and all that kind of stuff, over time, even though I'm eating a surplus and all this stuff, I'm going to see a lot of weight distribution and size go there, because that's where my absolute focus is. Basically, what's happening is we're creating micro tears in the muscle fibers. So we're actually damaging muscle when we lift weights. And then the food we take in, the amino acids, the protein, or amino acids, the building blocks of protein, go in there and repair, replenish, and rebuild and strengthen those muscle cells. So you get like these tears, and we go in there and straighten them out and build them stronger. And that's where you see the increased mass. And so that's where I think we can see some different distribution of overall mass. The same could be said absolutely if my training all of a sudden went to focus on my back, where I was just doing pull-ups like crazy and deadlifts like crazy and lat pull downs and heavy dumbbell rows, more so than training my abs or legs or shoulders. Like if there was just an emphasis on that area, you would see again more mass go to that area, because more damaged muscle, more repair, more overall increased muscle mass there. And then lastly, and again, that's true for every muscle group where you want to put some sort of focus and have some sort of control over it. And lastly, if we are seeing, whether on men or women, if we are seeing some excess mass going to midsection that's undesirable or unwanted, then we can simply increase our cardiovascular activity or evaluate the types of foods we're consuming and recognize that even though we like the taste of vegan ice cream or a pad thai that has lots of oil in it, or like I mentioned, fried rice, which I really like, but has a lot of oil in it. It has a lot of calories in it. 1,000 calories in a bag. It's ridiculous. We have to recognize that those are incompatible. So yes, I love this food, and yes, I love this exercise, but the results won't be what I desire if I do both. So I just need to change this food and make it healthier and more whole food and less oil, less refined flour and sugar and less salt and all that. Or I need to do more cardiovascular exercise, particularly in an efficient and effective fat burning zone, perhaps first thing in the morning or after weight training workout. And then I can maybe control some of those areas a little bit more.
Nice. Sherry's asking, what type of yoga do I practice? I practice yin/restorative. It's where you hold the poses for a long time. And if you're in Feel Fabulous, I actually do videos for the members, so you might want to check that out. And so, Robert, we have a question from Gina, and it is, I want to lift weights, but I'm afraid to because someone told me that you have to make sure and lift the weights for both sides of your muscles. In other words, if you lift the front shoulder too much, you might hunch over. You need to make sure you lift the opposite muscle on the backside. I don't know how to learn that.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good question about that point, that you need some sort of balance. Like if I were to turn to the side, if I train my chest too much, my shoulders could look like this. And this has happened for a while for me. In fact, back, especially when I was really, flexing, what was happening, I was rolling my shoulders because I was always I was a young muscle guy. Actually, I was doing that like last week, but just kidding. But that's the thing. If we train too much one area, and I know this as a sports massage therapist as well. In fact, this is one of the things that I worked with, that yeah, those muscles become shortened or tightened. So if these muscles are shortened here and pulling forward, then yeah, then we need to do something to balance out the back and stretch out the back as well. And so that's where training opposing muscle groups is helpful. But also understand that it's not like it's just going to happen overnight. All of a sudden you're going to be hunched over, or you're going to have one anterior rotated shoulder or something like that. It's going to be repetitive use over time. I mean, that's what any kind of holding pattern is. So we call it, I guess, in sports massage therapy. You have these holding patterns that you develop because of consistent use over time. Not to go too far off on a tangent, but this could be helpful. For example, how often do you open up a door with your dominant hand? Almost every time. How much when you're holding a baby, let's say, for those maybe who have kids or nieces or nephews or whatever, or a puppy or a dog, with your dominant hand? What about a backpack over your shoulder? Which side is it on? These are repetitive use holding patterns that create more of an issue, more an imbalance than this idea of training chest and back. Because how often are you in the gym? A few days a week for an hour at most. But how often are we here at a computer sitting like this, maybe for 12 hours, or sitting in a chair, on a couch, or in a car, or whatever for countless hours? And so those are more likely to be holding patterns than your exact balance of chest and back, or front of the arms, back of the arms. But that's a good question. And the awareness of that is important, because then you can make sure, okay, I've been doing a lot of biceps exercises. Now I'm going to train triceps too. Or I've done, a lot of anterior shoulder stuff. Now I'm going to do posterior as well, and some lateral, and balance out my total shoulder area too. So those are some approaches. And also want to just throw this in there, because I was talking about the time we spend at a computer, which I'm absolutely guilty of, and I'll be here the rest of the day creating a lot of magic in my writing. But one thing that's important to recognize is that did you know that you could train an hour a day, hard, 7 days a week, and still be considered an inactive person? Absolutely. If you went to the gym 7 days a week for an hour, but then you sat here for 14 hours or 12 hours, quite honestly, I often do, I'm actually considered an inactive person when I do that, compared to someone who is active, who is walking their dog, or doing a manual, some sort of physical job, or manual labor, or just as some actual activity, climbing upstairs throughout the day. That's actually more beneficial in the totality of exercise than just being completely stationary and then doing 1 hour of elevated activity and then coming back to being stationary. So something to keep in mind. And so, from the cruise we've both been on many times, Chef AJ, that I often encourage people to never see the inside of an elevator if possible.
You told me that the very first cruise, and with the exception of the day that I departed because I had 2 heavy suitcases,
Yeah.
I never used the elevator.
Yeah. And so I try to do that, other places too. So if you're at work and there's an elevator, unless you're on like the 20th floor or whatever, I mean, there's exceptions, in hotels or other areas, just use the stairs as often as possible. Just using our body is going to be a way to do all of these things that we've been talking about, to maintain a healthy metabolism, to build up endurance and heart strength and lung strength and muscle strength and flexibility and cardiovascular endurance, and to be more flexible and prevent injuries, and be more active and get more stimulation. And also, quite frankly, I don't know about you, Chef AJ, but when I'm sitting here for too long, even when I'm really in the zone, I get tired, and it wears me out because I'm not doing anything. So Karen's been working from home, like we all are these days. And so we'll get up and do jumping jacks sometimes, or I'll get out and just say, okay, I got to take the dog out. I got to go move. And so I think being aware of those types of things is really important, and just as important as muscle balance through training, as the individual asked that question.
Nice. Gina says he has so much humility and enthusiasm. It's contagious. I agree. And if you want to see the muscles that were built only on plants and no protein powders, tune in till the end and share this broadcast, please. So Robert, there's a question if you see a lot of eating disorders and body dysmorphia in the fitness world.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All the time. There are all types of eating disorders and body image disorders in the sport of bodybuilding. I'm not an expert. I don't know a whole lot about it. But you can see it. And I've probably been part of that myself. And through all my years of, quite frankly, obsession with photos and that are disguised as trying to track progress, but a lot of it is just trying to boost my own self-esteem, and a lot of that stems from me being a middle child and me being a really small kid, especially a small male athlete, and wanting to be bigger and stronger like a lot of my friends or fitness competitors or athletic sports competitors. And so I've gone through those phases where I've been really obsessed with body image and for myself in some destructive ways. And then it gets to the point where then you're not happy, not only maybe not happy with how you look, but you're not happy with how you're carrying yourself, because now it looks like you're an egomaniac constantly trying to, get a better pose. Actually, that looks pretty good. I don't know if you can see that. It's under there.
Hi.
So it's present. It's ever present. I mean, in fact, you want to know the biggest, what's the word? I mean, the biggest revelation, the biggest thing that's exposing this is Instagram and Throwback Thursday and Flashback Friday. I know, because I've often been living in the past for years, where I'm in pretty good shape right now, but not fantastic. I was actually in really good shape a few months ago, before a lot of this stress and moving and book and virus and everything. But that's not here nor there. That's an excuse. But I've often been guilty of that, where I was a champion bodybuilder. I remember when I did have like 6 or 8 pack abs and veins all throughout my body, and it was amazing. And so I throw that up on Instagram every week just to give myself a pat on the back so I feel good, especially if I know I don't look like that right now. I like to turn back the clock and remember what I used to be like or look like, or looking over my shoulder of my prior self. And I'm not alone. I see a lot of bodybuilders in the industry that I used to have posters on my wall with them. And these are guys I meet now. In fact, on a side note, now sometimes I sign books for these guys. I used to wait in line to get an autograph from them. And all these years later, now that they're older now and have felt the effects of eating animal protein their entire careers, many of them unfortunately have passed on, but many who I do see now come up to me and are looking for a plant-based diet for some sort of help in reversing their conditions they have. But I see a lot of these people who used to be in the spotlight. They were big time bodybuilders in muscle magazines, and they're not anymore, and they have a hard time letting go. And so they post their old photos all the time, and they get a lot of kudos. Oh man, you look amazing. Or what year was that? You looked incredible. You should have won that one. You're the best ever. You're a legend. That feels good. That feels good. And I've been caught up in that. And that lives with me even right now, where I told you, like, I don't maybe feel super comfortable flexing right now because of how I feel about myself right now. And this certainly is not limited to just women or just men or just one aspect of bodybuilding. This is all throughout sports culture. I mean, this is the problem with former athletes of any kind. I mean, imagine when you have your identity, what you were known for, what you were great at, taken away from you. You can't do it anymore. You can't perform. You can't run fast. You can't jump high. You can't tackle people on a football field. Who are you now? Who are you without your uniform, without your name on your jersey, without your money in the bank? And that's hard. And so I've struggled with that a lot, especially with things like social media, where everything appears to be, even though it may not be so, everything appears to be a competitive a competitive world. You know, who has the most followers, who's the biggest name, who's the biggest reputation. And I have to be careful myself not to get caught up in that, where I grew up in an era where I was one of the only vegan bodybuilders in the whole world. There were like 3 of us for a long time that had any kind of media attention. And now I'm, you know, I'm a bit of a has-been for a lot of people, or I'm, you know, I'm past my prime. I'm not relevant. And I have to internalize that. How does that make me feel? And in turn, how does that make me act? How do I eat because of that? How do I live because of that? How do I exercise or not exercise because of that? I can cling to what I had in the past and say, well, let me show you, this is who I used to be. Or I can say, this is who I am and this is what I'm comfortable with doing now. And maybe I don't want that anymore. Or maybe I want it, but I can't have it. And so I've got to find something else to be great at. And maybe that's even why I go back to writing, because I'm better than 90% of people out there. And I know that because I've been doing it my whole adult life. And that's something I'm really good at right now. And so that's what I do. But it's definitely prevalent. And it's unfortunate that whether it's eating disorders or body image issues are out there, but it's when you're talking about a sport that is based on aesthetic look and judged on aesthetic look, you know, what do you expect? What can you expect? You know, so
just like show business and modeling.
Yeah, it is. And so it doesn't just affect athletes. It affects all types of career individuals and all types of personalities and people. And I mean, anybody, even if you have no social media presence, you don't have an established name, you're not a public figure, but so many of us go through life also like comparing ourselves to our last high school reunion and comparing ourselves to other people we may have seen there or might see, or what they were doing on Facebook. I think it's human nature. And it's just unfortunate that it's really compounded in sports like bodybuilding.
Yeah, absolutely. The question is, what do you think of whole food plant proteins like soy products, tofu, and tempeh?
Yeah, good question. I like them. I sure ate a lot of them for a long time. So much so that I actually took a break from those types of foods, including when I wrote Shred It, because I just had a better understanding. I mean, I learned from Forks Over Knives. I took Dr. T. Colin Campbell's plant-based nutrition course through Cornell. I had written a number of books at that point. I was attending these conferences that people like you put on, or the Plantition Project or others that put on, where I'm like one of the few non-physicians there just trying to learn and take notes and network and be inspired by people. And so I actually went out of my way to avoid high protein foods, even things like tofu. Like when you go to a restaurant, oh, would you like, for extra $1 add tofu? It wasn't the price. I just wasn't interested. Or even if it's free, what would you like as your protein added? Would you like tofu? Would you like mock chicken? Would you like, whatever it is? No, I'm good. Just the vegetables. I'm fine. And that's still how I feel. I mean, did I have tofu yesterday? I did, actually. I had tofu yesterday. But I haven't today, and I don't know if I will today. But it's not something I really focus on, because again, I think we hyper focus on one particular macronutrient, and I think we do a disservice that way. Partly the reason I say that is because anytime we focus heavily on one macronutrient, particularly protein, what we do is we load up on that macronutrient, whether in powder form or tofu, tempeh, seitan form. And what I believe is we deprive ourselves from the more nutrient rich and nutrient dense complex carbohydrates that are still going to provide adequate protein. Lentils and beans of all types and things like that. But you're also just going to get more vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, fiber, phytonutrients with those complex carbohydrates. And so if we load up on tofu, where's room for the salad? Or where's room for the colorful vegetables? We're not interested, quite frankly. And I know that, again, from personal experience. I consume more tofu products than maybe anyone in the world during a period of time. When I first got into bodybuilding, that I saved all the wrappers and tried to get sponsored by the companies. That's when I ate 18 tofu hot dogs in one day, which is like my entire height in vegan wiener. And I consume so much that it's 7 Cliff Bars in a day. I mean, soy protein isolate's the number 1 or number 2 ingredient. Not always the best thing. And also, Chef AJ, the reason why I don't try to load up too much on things like tofu, tempeh, and seitan is because most of us are not aware and certainly aren't transparent about what we really eat during the day. And so we may think that, oh, I don't need that much protein, maybe I need more protein. But we don't realize that we had a heavy protein breakfast or protein drink after workout or two throughout the day. And that this extra emphasis on tofu, tempeh, seitan, or other concentrated, more whole food proteins is just adding to an already stockpile of something that we reached our daily intake for long ago, many hours ago. And I would much rather go with something that's going to provide more overall nutrition, which is leafy green vegetables, fruits, complex, unrefined carbohydrates, potatoes, yams, starches, lentils, beans, some of the most cost-effective and accessible foods out there. So that's kind of my take on and of course, I'm sure it goes without saying, when we do eat those foods, try to get them as organic, non-GMO as possible. It's one of those crops that's just, it's heavily genetically modified and in isolated forms, not so healthy.
Absolutely. Nadej agrees. So true about protein. Is Arnold really vegan, or is this just a phase?
Arnold is not vegan. So Arnold is what I would call plant-centered. I've met Arnold, but I have not seen him recently. But I have read articles about him, including recent quotes, and I follow him on social media, and I do hope to bump into him again at the gym. I actually was hoping to see him at the Game Changers premiere in Hollywood, but through unfortunate incidents, he wasn't able to come to the after party that he was hosting. His best friend passed away, unfortunately, in an accident. Otherwise, I would have seen him a few months ago. But he is not. So he's not vegan. He will still say the word vegan, like describing a food, but not himself. He'll say, I'm having a vegan salad here, which he said a week ago on Instagram. But he himself is not philosophically vegan or even dietarily vegan. But he eats mostly a plant-centered diet now. And that influence came largely from James Cameron, who is a good friend of his. And James Cameron was inspired by Forks Over Knives. James Cameron, of course, eventually became one of the executive producers of the Game Changers that brought Arnold into, I'm pretty sure that's the thing that brought Arnold into it, through that friendship with James Cameron. And James is really focused on the environment and everything. And so Arnold gets a lot of that stuff. And he totally understands and appreciates that you can build muscle on a plant-based diet. In fact, Bill Pearl, who was vegetarian, not vegan, but Bill Pearl used to beat Arnold in bodybuilding competitions as a vegetarian. Granted, Bill was like 35 and his career was coming to an end at Mr. Universe, Mr. America, and Arnold was 19 and kind of getting started. But Arnold does know firsthand, and he's mentioned this in recent interviews too, that you can absolutely build muscle on a plant-based diet. And so he understands it, but I also, not that long ago, a few months ago, it was after the Game Changers release, a few months ago, he was heavily promoting a whey protein brand because that's someone he's sponsored by or has a stake in the company. And so, money talks, and 70 years of a certain way of eating talks. And he certainly is incorporating more plants into his diet and was plant-centered, but absolutely is not vegan and certainly doesn't call himself that.
Great. What I worry about sometimes is when celebrities go vegan. It's great because it gets other people interested. But I think of Michael Clark Duncan, who died of a massive heart attack, and he was supposedly vegan, but he was huge. He was huge, muscular, wonderful actor from The Green Mile.
Absolutely.
But he had a very, very heavy meat diet. And then what happens is they die, and it's like, oh, it's because they're vegan, Right.
And I actually, I really liked him as an actor. I don't know that he was full vegan. I think he was maybe vegetarian. And if he was full vegan, again, for a short time. And so, this because we're at many of the same lectures and presentations by wonderful Dr. Clapper and Campbell and Esselstyn and Brenda Davis and all these great people, that you build up plaque in arteries when you're really young. And that plaque buildup, damaged endothelial cells and restricted blood flow is happening throughout most of our adult lives. And so he was already in a very compromised position with his blood vessels. And so a few months or a year of vegan diet is not necessarily going to completely eradicate that. And it's something that for many people, it can start to slow things down and start to improve. And obviously it does, can lower cholesterol and lower body fat and reduce body weight and even clean up arteries and all that. But every person's different and it's going to react a different way. And also every person is also different in how accurately they portray their diet too. Some people may claim to be plant-based and vegan and all this and consume copious amounts of alcohol or other things that are detrimental to their health that maybe that's not fully disclosed. So you never know. Everybody's a little bit different and their body reacts differently. But with you, I get a little discouraged when people identify as vegan. And of course we live in this celebrity culture. I know you've spent a lot of time in Hollywood and Los Angeles, and I've lived in LA 3 separate times for short periods of time. And, we have this celebrity culture. We really put people up on a high pedestal. And so then we're set up for disappointment, or we're set up for people who are not vegan, and certainly who maybe don't appreciate the vegan lifestyle, have an example to point to, like, this didn't work for this person, whether it's, Brad Pitt and his family or Michael Clark Duncan or whomever it is. And so I think we just try to understand the health risks and rewards of any diet and do the best we can. And as the research tends to show, the plant-based diet is the best at lowering all-cause mortality rates. And so, like Dr. Greger says, that should be the default diet until, further notice.
Absolutely. Jesse says, I really appreciate Robert's willingness to be so honest and revealing about himself. And you are the first person I ever met that ate their height in wieners, vegan wieners. That's hilarious.
It was quite the feat. I probably got close second or third time too. I used to eat a lot of soy products, especially those packaged products filled with sodium. But I was young and in my 20s, and I could get away with that much vegan wiener.
Nice. That's funny. Well, I could say something very inappropriate here with that, but I won't. A lot of people are asking for Dr. Goldhammer. I have asked him, guys, to please come on live. He just is too busy. He's going to be speaking in Feel Fabulous, my group, in May, but he just doesn't want to do a live right now. I'm so sorry. I will keep asking. So time for one more question, Robert. What are the books you've written? Maybe you can show them to us if you have them nearby. Where can people get them, and how can they get in touch with you or follow you?
Yeah, thanks. So I actually only have one with me because everything's in storage and I just can't access anything. So I have Plant-Based Muscle that I wrote with Vanessa Espinoza, who's absolutely amazing. She's been a vegan athlete since, 2003 or whatever the case, 18 years, do the math. And she's a world-class athlete as a powerlifter, All-American basketball player, 3-time state Colorado boxing champion. And so we co-authored Plant-Based Muscle. And of course it's on Amazon and on veganbodybuilding.com. And Shred It, which is probably the book that would be most interesting to your audience. Shred It is a whole food plant-based guide to building your body. So it's endorsed by Dr. Campbell and Esselstyn and Brian Wendell from Forks Over Knives and Rich Roll and Rip Esselstyn and all these different people. And so that was something I was really proud of. And in fact, one of the things I'm most proud of in my whole life is to have a book endorsed by Dr. Campbell and Dr. Esselstyn. And Shred It, it's called, is on Amazon as well and on veganbodybuilding.com. And I think it's maybe my best book because my Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness book I wrote first, but it's loaded with processed foods and supplements because that's what I was doing in my late 20s when I wrote the book. I've learned a lot since then. A lot of people found it really motivating because I was a really rah, motivational type guy in that book about follow your passion and make it happen and make the most out of the 1,440 minutes you have every day. And I'm still like that, just an older version of that. So I wouldn't recommend Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness to your audience unless people want to get a little motivation from it. But, there's other ways to find motivation, including from within. And I think Shred It, which is shred and then IT exclamation point, Shred It, is probably the best. And I think it has actually, amazingly, I think it has perfect 5-star reviews on Amazon, even 5 years later. So that's what I would check out. And then the last thing I'm just super passionate about is Vegan Strong. There's not-for-profit organization that I'm part of. And we travel, we did, we're on hiatus at the moment, but to all the major fitness expos in the country promoting the vegan fitness lifestyle, the vegan strong lifestyle, and has a really bold message on the back. Let's see if you can read it. Let's see, can you read that?
Plants have all the protein you need.
Yeah, so that's our slogan. Let me slide back over here. And so yeah, and we have these vegan strong booklets that are great. This is a free booklet, but you know, something that we distribute on
I actually saw that at the Veg Fest.
Yeah, these are pretty cool. I mean, great chart, protein lists, and foods. You know, these are great foods that I took photos of and put together. And anyway, I'm really excited about our vegan strong clothing because I think it's important to show people that plants have all the protein you need, even though we can't go to gyms or go out and about these days. And that's on the Herbivore Clothing Company. They sell all our stuff, and they're great people I've known for 15 years.
Nice. I think it's time to take your sweatshirt off.
It is getting a little hot.
Ladies, and oh boy, the moment we've all been waiting for.
Like I said, not too much flexing. Let's see. There's a little bit of muscle in the forearm there. There we go. I don't know if that's a good angle.
You look like Popeye.
Yeah, that's, I think, partly from being a massage therapist. My forearms got really, really big for a long time. So I don't want to stretch the shirt out, but I guess I can pull the sleeves up a little bit. You did advertise it, right?
Wait, you need to talk, because when I talk, it's on me.
Okay, so anyway, I am excited about Vegan Strong. I'm carrying a little more body fat than usual right now, but I'm still well over 200 pounds and training when it works. There you go. There's some muscle there, I think, if I talk. You can see it pop up. But yeah,
you look like an action figure. You literally
been doing this for 25 years now, you know, as a plant-based athlete, and something that I've just been really, really passionate about. What started as a 15-year-old animal rights kid who didn't want to hurt animals, you know, has come a long way as a 40-year-old plant-based athlete of 25 years. So anyway.
Jesse says you definitely put the lie to people who claim that you can't build muscle with plants. I know there's been a few questions about fat loss. I'm sorry we didn't have time to get to it, but I have another interview that I actually am being interviewed for. Otherwise, I could talk to Robert all day, but I promised to get him back to talk about that, at least on the Truth About Weight Loss Summit, where we can focus on that. So where can people get in touch with you? Facebook, YouTube, Instagram? What's the best place to mailing list?
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, my newsletter is a really fun place. On veganbodybuilding.com, you can just click the button, subscribe to newsletter. That's where I kind of, you know, I write like personal, I give advice, you know, I don't want to say advice, but I write articles and plant-based health and fitness and all that. But I also, you know, tell stories about, you know, my writing progress or my dogs or whatever. It's so I have a newsletter I send out about every week or so, or every 2 weeks, on veganbodybuilding.com. I am on all the main social media platforms, although oftentimes I try to cut back on my use on those because I'm trying to maximize productivity, which often involves avoiding those and focusing on a Word file and writing. But yeah, I'm Robert Cheeke, just like your face, but with an E on the end. And that's where you can find me on social media, either Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness or Robert Cheeke, and I will see you there.
All right. It's so great talking to you and catching up. I wish you and Karen all the success in the world in Colorado. Good luck with your new book. And thanks for taking the time to talk to everybody. We love you so much. And, you know, I don't know, you're a little bit scrawny. Just think you gotta work out.
I would also encourage people, I'd be remiss if I didn't say to please go check out veganstrong.com as well. That's our nonprofit group. The website's, you know, has some content on there. We're adding more to it all the time, including an article I wrote yesterday. So on the affordability and cost effectiveness of a plant-based diet. So something to look forward to.
That's great. Jesse says Robert's a great speaker. He is. I've actually hired him to speak at one of my conferences he's in. And I think of him more almost as a motivational speaker than anything else, you know?
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And that's actually how my mom describes me when she tells people at the thrift shop that she volunteers at, that her son is a motivational speaker. So I better live up to that if that's what she's telling the folks at the thrift shop.
That's great. Love to Karen and both the dogs. Thank you guys for watching.
Yeah,
come back. Let's see. Who do we have tomorrow?
Somebody. There we go. Ellie wants to say bye. Ellie wants to say bye.
Oh, goodbye, Ellie. It's so nice to meet you. I'm sorry I didn't get to see Benny. Come back tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific time when I have a vegan cardiologist, plant-based cardiologist, Dr. Reddy, who's from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And head on over to veganbodybuilding.com and like Robert's page and subscribe to him on all social media and get that book shredded. Thanks again, Robert. Take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye, Chef AJ.
Bye, everybody.